The Northwestern Railway was just under construction. Several engines were brought to help build the railway, Thomas the Tank Engine and Edward the Blue Engine being the first two. While they gave splendid effort, eventually it was clear that the work was starting to wear on them. Sir Topham Hatt the First brought several more engines on loan from other railways to help with the heavy work on the main line. Meanwhile, at Brighton Works, a new engine class was built. These tank engines were known primarily as the LBSCR A1s, also nicknamed affectionately as the Terriers. However, in 1919, something had gone terribly wrong with the construction of one of these Terriers, for she only had half of her face, the other half being her smoke-box door.
Good God, is everyone alright? Yeah, I'm alright. But what the fuck is that?
They began calling the engine all sorts of mean names and slurs. The engine tried to speak, but couldn't due to her deformity. She felt terrible. She wished she had never been built, and tears welled up in her eyes, and she began to cry as the foremen and other builders continued to laugh at her. Later that day, Sir Topham Hatt came to visit the engine.
Hello, my name is Sir Topham Hatt, of the island of Sodor. We are building a railway, and once completed, I would like to bring you over on trial. Would you like that?
The engine smiled, but was unsure of how she would feel around the other engines.
Excuse me, sir, but she has this defect with her face that makes her difficult to speak, and I take all matters into consideration. Thank you for your time.
And Sir Topham Hatt walked briskly away. The engine smiled, but felt uncertain about her future. However, things only got worse from there. She struggled to pull her trains, and maintenance on her was a nightmare. She would scream in pain during the whole process, and to make matters worse, the cleaners thought it was just an act and that she was being dramatic, and so as a result, were extra rough. Her speech was garbled and unidentifiable, and the other engines had trouble understanding what she was saying. She was in immense pain the whole time, and at night, her cries and pleas for the pain to go away and to be rid of her deformity were so great that Thomas and the other engines could barely stomach it. But the nastiest of the engines took her for a great joke and took pleasure in taunting and teasing her about her deformity, as well as some of the crews. The engine also had steaming troubles, which made the crews that were assigned to work with her that day very annoyed, as they thought she was just being lazy.
Come on, you stupid engine! Why aren't you steaming up? Stop fooling around and get to work now! Chop, chop!
The engine tried to explain in her unidentifiable speech that she was doing her best, but the crew couldn't understand her and yelled at her some more, and that made her cry because she wanted nothing more than to be a useful engine just like the others. I hope your steaming problems get better. See you later, reject.
Hurry up and get out of my way, you clumsy engine. I need to couple up to my goods train.
Oh, please. This miserable reject has no business being on this island. I propose the Fat Director do something about it before it's too late.
And what do you propose, 87546?
First off, that's not my name. It's Regaby. And I propose that we do everyone here a favor and give this poor reject a swift end to her misery, and then we, as well as the other engines, will be spared of all her crying and moaning.
87546, you're not suggesting that.
Don't question me, Alad. I have a plan, and it's foolproof. We cannot get in trouble if she's the one who chose to do it. Aha.
That night, Edward came to the shed. He felt sorry for the deformed engine. Edward smiled kindly. Hello. I don't believe we've properly met. I'm Edward. The deformed engine tried to speak in her garbled, unidentifiable speech, but then burst into tears because of all the other engine's insults. It's okay, said Edward soothingly. I'm not here to make fun of you. I don't like the way the other engines and workers have been treating you, and I just want you to know that I'm here for you, and so is Thomas and Eagle. We know how it feels to be looked down on, so just know that you do have friends here, so you don't have to be alone anymore. For the first time, the engine smiled and had a peaceful night's sleep. She felt better knowing that she had a good friend in Edward. But one night, the deformed engine was asleep, alone in a siding by Vickerstown sheds. Edward was out taking the mail, and Winston was taking a late-night passenger train. Suddenly, she felt as if she wasn't alone. Regaby had come home late from taking a late-night goods train. He pulled smoothly into where the deformed engine was resting and stared her dead in the eyes with a cold smirk. You don't belong here, or anywhere else for that matter, you deformed reject. The engine began to cry and scream again, for the pain had once again returned because of what Regaby had said to her. Oh, yes, of course. Cry. That's all you're good for. You always cry and always moan. You're the most useless engine ever. See you around, reject. The engine once again felt like a useless reject who nobody cared for. That night, something changed in her. The engine puffed out of her siding and down the rails into the night, all the while muttering threats at Regaby and the other engines who treated her horribly. She ventured down a dark and heavily forested path. She returned the next morning. Thomas and Eagle and Timothy were all concerned. But where did you go last night? Thomas asked. He was very worried. The engine didn't answer his question. Instead, she only spoke about how he and the other engines and the whole railway would all perish in her garbled, unidentifiable speech. The others believed she had been driven mad from all the trauma she endured. For the rest of the day, the engine continued to act out in violent ways. Later that day, she hissed steam at Regaby, 98462, and even Alad Greedy, growling and mouthing threats at them, even at those who felt pity for her, Edward being one of them. Easy, easy, I know you're in pain. This caused the engine to lash out in such a way that it caught the attention of Sir Topham Hatt. She did what? Well, if this happens again, or even if she has another breakdown, it saddens me to say it, but she will have failed her trial here. And unfortunately, I do not have enough finances saved to send her to another railway, so. But, sir, you're not saying that. All options are on the table, including your job here. Now get back to work. Sir Topham Hatt slammed the door in Edward's driver's face. That night in the sheds, Edward told the other engines about his driver's conversation with Sir Topham Hatt. "But he can't do that," Thomas burst out. "Surely, Edward, you must have some idea. We have to help our friend." "Unfortunately, Thomas, I do not." He could tell that Sir Topham Hatt was under enough stress as it was. "We've done our best, Thomas, and in the end, it is Sir Topham Hatt's decision, so I'm afraid we'll just have to move on, Thomas." Thomas felt terrible. He did not want to move on, and he felt very guilty for not being able to help out a friend. The engines feared the worst for their friend. Then slowly, one by one, they sadly went to sleep. All except for the deformed engine, who left the shed again and headed down the dark forested path, all the while muttering threats under her breath. Eventually, Sir Topham Hatt lost patience and ordered an engine to take her to be scrapped. "It saddens me greatly to see you go. I can tell that you are a good sort. However, with all your mishaps, this is just not going to be a good fit. You've had a good life. Now best of luck to you on your future. Rest in peace." Meanwhile, Thomas and another engine were heading home from work. Suddenly, in the distance, they saw smoke pouring from the direction of the scrapyard where the engine was taken, and the sound of multiple sirens. They quickly dashed in the direction of the scrapyard. "Bust my buffers! The whole smelter shed's burned down!" The whole yard was ablaze and everything was destroyed. The deformed engine's body was nowhere in sight. But the worst sight stood before them. The engine, who had been ordered to take the deformed engine to be scrapped, sat cut in half, right down the middle, with no faults, dead and motionless. The other half was nowhere in sight. Thomas felt sick to his boiler. "I want everybody out of here now!" Thomas quickly backed away from the scene, with the other engine in tow. The fire was soon put out, and the remains of the engine and the shed were scrapped on the spot. Sir Topham Hatt was deeply disturbed. "Tell no one about this, and if anyone asks, tell them it was an isolated incident. We have a railway to run, and we've had too many setbacks, and now we're down an engine because of this tragedy." The deformed engine was never seen again, but the rumors soon began to spread amongst the engines and their crews that those who disrespect ones with disabilities get a visit from the half-engine's spirit.